This is the I Love Success podcast. I'm Peter Jabrukovsky, and I have made a vow to myself to help as many people as possible to achieve their dreams. Let's get started. Hey guys, and welcome back to the I Love Success podcast. Before we get started, before I introduce this week's guest, which I'm super excited to have, by the way, I just want to say thank you guys. Thank you for tuning in, listening. I don't know if you're driving, you're at the gym, or you're just in your office, home office, laying in your pajamas, or whatever it is you're doing. I hope you're dreaming big. I hope you are visualizing and seeing a bright future no matter where you are right now. My mission is to help at least 10 million people in 10 years to go after their dreams. Right now, you are the most important person to me. Listen, enjoy, kick back, but also take notes and take at least one thing with you today that can help you move in the direction that you want to be in life. We're here to help. I want to hear from you. So please let me know how it's going. If there's anything that we can help and assist you with, I would love to be that person for you. And without further ado, and before I introduce this week's guest, I also want to say thank you to Remarkable 2. And I've written down my goals basically since I was 15 years old. And I always did pen to paper. I'm a big believer in pen to paper. I don't believe in typing it in on the computer, which is probably better than not doing it at all, or your phone. But there's something magical that happens when you type pen to paper. Now with the Remarkable, you can actually do that digitally. So if you want to be cool and look cool and but still be, a little bit old school, check out Remarkable. I really like it. I can also send my articles from, LA Times, New York Times, all the magazines directly to it as a PDF, and all the advertising and all the bright lights is gone. So check out Remarkable if you're interested in that. This week's guest, we got connected in a strange way. He inquired on a property, and then we started chatting, sending some cool, sports pictures, action pictures. And, now we're here today. We actually never met in person, but I got the honor, to having Ryan here on my podcast. And Ryan Chen is a super cool dude, grew up, loved sports, and when he was 19, his life completely changed. He shattered his spine in a snowboarding accident and was instantly paralyzed from the waist down. As you can imagine, this hit hard. And what do you do from that? And that's the question we're going to ask today. How do you come back to loving life and doing something incredible? Ryan is here now as a super cool human individual that are building an incredible company called Neuro, and they were on Shark Tank. They're rolling out to Whole Foods all over the country, which is fucking badass. I don't know if I'm allowed to curse, but it's my show, so I'm gonna do it anyway. So yeah, Ryan Chen, without further ado, welcome to the I Love Success podcast.
Peter, thanks so much for having me. I love the intro. I love the energy.
I mean, that's you. Before we go into, all the nitty gritty and all of that, can you just tell us a little bit, who was Ryan Chen when you were a kid? What did you dream about? What did you love to do, and things like that?
Yeah, I mean, I grew up in a neighborhood in Pasadena here in close by to LA. Grew up in a very, very diverse neighborhood. We were like the one Chinese family there, African American family next to me. That their two kids were my best friends growing up. Filipino family, Caucasian family, Korean family, Armenian family. It was so eclectic in this one block, and so that was really special. I got introduced to all sorts of food at a really young age, and I think if you kind of would describe me, or my mom would describe me, I was kind of a handful. I was always kind of running around. I was like the little kid trying to be like a little menace, but I had a lot of fun growing up. I grew up in a really loving household, and yeah, got put in sports quite early. So my parents put a pretty good equal emphasis on athletics and academics, and for that I'm forever grateful.
Awesome. And what sports did you love to do as a kid?
Yeah, I mean, as a kid, my mom, I think each parent got to choose what sport I was gonna do. So for my mom, she put me in kendo, which is a Japanese martial art.
Yeah.
It's like it's like a fencing. It's like one of the national sports out in Japan. And then my dad really wanted me to get into golf. So those were the two sports I grew up doing. And then middle school, high school, got to play basketball, run cross country and track, and that's really kind of where I found my stride. So
Awesome.
yeah, high school was big for me. I was living in Japan for 5 years prior to that, but moved my sophomore year back in like 2005,
Yeah.
and got super into cross country and track, and we got to go, our state nationals, my junior and senior year, and it was like a pretty incredible experience.
Wow. And what did you learn from living in Japan?
Oh man.
I love
Well,
Japan,
one,
by the way.
I love Japan.
It's
Are
such a
you?
great place.
It's beautiful. When did you go?
2008, I competed in the World Championship there in Nippon Budokan in Tokyo.
Whoa,
That was a
amazing.
great experience. Yeah.
That's an incredible. So I competed at the Budokan
Oh, you
when I
did?
was in middle school for kendo. Yeah, so that was a national championships.
Wow.
I was a black belt when I was in 8th grade, and then our dojo was called Jijokan, and they're really famous for kendo. Got to compete in Budokan, which is really special.
Yeah, it's a cool arena, and I remember
It's
walking in there. It's
beautiful.
so
There's so much
high.
history.
It's it's incredible.
Yeah, it's super special.
It was funny. I don't know how you, but I felt so small when I was in there because it was so high, the bleacher, and was like, this is a cool place.
Yeah, exactly. Um, yeah, it was super special. I mean, I loved it. And
Yeah.
my experience there was like, I was in middle school. So my parents had split. My parents are both Chinese, but both born and raised Japan. So
Okay.
culturally, I was very Japanese, identified with Japanese culture, but obviously, born in America, I'm an American. So going back to the country and living in Japan was special. I got to go to international school, meet a lot of people, but um, yeah, I learned a lot.
Yeah.
I met a lot of really interesting people at a really young age.
That's interesting. I'm curious, as if you're Chinese in Japan, is there racism there, or how is it over there?
Um, yeah, I think so because I was in an international school, I think I wasn't probably exposed to as much, but at the same time I spoke Japanese growing up. So I
Yeah.
think they could obviously tell I probably had an American accent.
Yeah.
But I didn't really quite experience that racism. But I know that there's obviously a lot of history in the past, and even now there is some animosity, I think, between the two countries.
One of the coolest experiences that I had in Japan was, that everybody honors every type of work and take a pride in it. So what happened to me, I remember for people who haven't been in Tokyo, the subway system there, it's huge, and if you can't
Yeah,
read Japanese, it's a challenge. So I had this note where we
and
were
there's
supposed to,
millions of people,
and there's millions of
literally
people,
every.
literally, right? So I had this piece of paper where it said the station. So I go to the counter, I ask, hey, we're going here, how do we get there? And the person working behind the desk just showed me everything, and then we were
They
walking.
like physically walk you all the way, right? They're so
Yeah,
generous with their time.
he didn't do that at that time, but he was like, go this, that, and said it like
Mm,
multiple times. But
got it.
then we're down, we found the place, and like 2 minutes later, he comes running towards me. It's like, what did I do? What did I do? And he came with the, I had forgotten the piece of paper with the name,
Oh,
and he came and he like put his hand like in honor, like, here you
oh,
go, you forgot this. I was like, wow.
yeah, that's super special. Yeah, you
That's
definitely. I mean, one thing I do remember about living in Japan is I was kind of like a clumsy kid. Like I was like pretty forgetful, like leaving stuff. Like I mean, like phones and wallet.
yeah.
I've lost my phone and wallet. I think in the 4 or 5 years I was there, probably 3 times.
Oh wow.
And every single time it would come back with all the money, all the cards, everything was back in it. It's a very honored based society where
Yeah.
if somebody drops something, like they'll give it back. One time, actually, I dropped my wallet, and it was raining, and they returned. Some amazing honest person returned it to the police station, had previously taken out all the cards, had fanned it to dry it off for me, and then returned it to the police officer. It's just like that little attention to detail is very sweet. And
Yeah,
yeah, that definitely makes Japan very special.
that's
Just
beautiful.
one of the many things. And the
One of the
food,
many
yeah, the
things.
food's incredible. Yeah,
Yeah.
they have the best
So
food.
you go to Japan, you come back, and then you love sports, and then you go on a skiing trip. Can you just talk about that and like what happened?
Yeah, so I actually got recruited for a couple schools to run cross country and track, and decided to kind of focus more of my efforts on like student council and things that were more um, like student council oriented. And
Yeah.
so freshman year, I was one of the liaisons on in our undergraduate campus. I went to UCSD, where I met my co-founder. And sophomore year in 2009, I was 19, and we were up for our friend's birthday, a little skiing trip. And everything seemed regular. It was like, little did I know that my life would change, in like the next like 24 hours. But I was going off a jump like about February 8th in 2009, and I landed on my spine about 35 feet, going off a pretty big jump. I grew up skiing. I grew up snowboarding. It was something I loved doing. It's still a big part of my life. I go mono skiing now, which is it's incredibly fun. But in that moment, yeah, everything stopped. Like, I remember hitting the ground. It was cold. It was like a whiteout storm, so you couldn't really quite see your landing, and that, I think, that was a big reason for the injury. But I remember laying down, and I mean, the park was pretty much closed because the weather was so bad and the conditions were so bad. But luckily, my girlfriend at the time was behind me, realized something was wrong. I couldn't get up. I couldn't feel my legs. She skied down to get ski patrol. And immediately, I mean, I kind of knew something was serious when I couldn't feel my legs. I couldn't move. And I also was having trouble breathing because the impact was so big that what happened was, like, I had a T9 burst fracture. So my ninth thoracic vertebrae exploded, and I punctured my right lung because I broke all my ribs. And
Oh,
so it was a combination of all that, but a lot of adrenaline. I remember just like, where am I? Like, what happened? I knew where I was, but I knew something was bad. So I didn't want to fall asleep, or if I hit my head, I didn't want to like go unconscious. Um, but I mean, within 8 hours between the ambulance going to one hospital, going to another, going to trauma one surgery in Loma Linda, um, they put me under to stabilize my spine and basically rebuild my back. Um, I woke up a couple days later in the ICU, and then I was told that I would never walk again. And so that was, one, surreal, and two, I actually didn't believe it at first. I was like, "There's no way that this could happen." I'm running, I'm snowboarding. How could this happen? Especially at that age, there's a lot of moments of confusion and denial, I think, at first. Um, but yeah, spent the better half of about 6 months in and out of living in a hospital, and then trying to go back to school later that same year in September.
thank you for sharing that first of all. And
Yeah, no,
what happens in the mind during those times when like somebody tells you like, hey, you're never gonna walk again, and you don't believe them, like, right? And
yeah.
when does it kick in, and how do you, like, what are the thoughts that goes through your mind at that point?
The first moment when I heard it, I didn't believe it. I was almost like in denial, and so much shock. Like, I like my brain could not process like what was being told. Um, my mom was living in Japan at the time, flew in, my dad, my sister, my close friends. Um, and I think like they knew that something was really serious. And then when they heard the diagnosis, I think everybody was like just shocked, crying. I got letters from my team in high school, and like friends and everybody back at school, and I think that started to sink in, where I was getting like big posters and cards and get better and get well soon, text message, emails, all that stuff. And I think for the first few months it was, you know almost like blind optimism. I thought that, like, I have to get better, there's no way. And I think reality to really started to sink in, I would say month 3 onward. And to be completely honest, I think the first 2 years was very, very tough. um I went through major ups and downs, emotional swings from like 19 to 21. Also during that 2-year span, I did a total of about 15 surgeries. So every time I was like, wait, why me? And then you go through this like moments of frustration, depression. even suicidal thoughts. You're just like, I don't know what my life is going to even mean anymore. Like how can I possibly recover from this, or like what kind of future can my life hold? So you ask yourself a lot of these questions, and in a lot of ways it became very philosophical. I lived a lot in my mind, and asked myself these difficult questions. And honestly, like without the friends and the family and that like kind of unconditional support, I really don't think I would be here.
I mean, it's so crazy because I've had those thoughts like what would happen to my life if I'm in an accident and I
Hmm.
get paralyzed. And to be honest with you, before I started this podcast 4 or 5 years ago, I would have said like, hey, I don't want to live then.
Hmm.
Uh,
Exactly. Yeah. Those are
yeah,
exact thoughts that go through a lot of people's minds, I think.
yeah, I think a lot of people. But then when you get the the opportunity to meet with people that have gone through that, you realize that something we're magnificent as human beings. We find a way
Yeah.
to survive and we find a way to thrive again. And can you just talk about when was the shift when you like went from, hey, I don't want to do this anymore, and like what's going on with my life, until you
Mhm.
started feeling like, hey, I can actually do this?
I think it, yeah, there's like one to go on to that point, what you're saying, humans are incredibly adaptable. Um, and perseverance is a huge factor. I think people aren't sure what they're capable of until like their backs against the wall, and like,
Yeah.
you're forced and you're pushed to see what your limits are. And for me, it was a lot of that was like the emotional and mental push. Like I really thought I was like on that verge. But it in turn made me more stronger. I think in a lot of ways more empathetic. I think going back to your point, um, I think it was about a year and a half into it when I first made my like trip out. I traveled with some friends, realized that like, oh, a lot of the things that I focused on in the beginning was like, oh, I can't do this or I can't do that. This is going to be different. And then you realize you put all these negative thoughts in your mind of like, oh, like you start with I can't versus before it's like, oh, I can do this.
Yeah.
And slowly you start checking off things of like, oh, I can go on a road trip, or I can go to music festivals, I can learn to drive, I can graduate, I could double make. You start doing things and you start checking off goals. And then you slowly kind of build your confidence back. I think for me it wasn't obviously an overnight thing. You don't just wake up the next morning, you're like, hey, you know what, everything is good. It was like slow small milestones. And I think one thing I always tell myself and others is just like celebrate the small wins, because life is so short, moves so fast. You got to just appreciate how far you've come, and give yourself some credit, when credit's due, and you're working hard, and you see small levels of progression. I think that's really important for one, your mental health, and two, your confidence to build into something, and realize that your goalposts can keep moving back further and further, and you can be more confident, and you can start to look for more bigger and audacious goals. Like, it slowly happens, but it takes small steps at a time.
Was it any specific person or book or YouTube video or anything that kind of started giving you more energy?
Man, yeah, so many of my close friends you're pivotal. Like, my co-founder Kent's like one of my best friends, and he's like a brother to me. My childhood best friend Brandon came to visit me in the hospital, and I remember one thing he said was like, hey man, like you're still the same guy, but now you're just in the chair chilling. And he just
Yeah.
said that with so much swag and confidence. And I laughed because I was like, oh man, like you're right. Like I'm still the same person. Like getting from point A to point B might be different, but inherently, like I am who I am. And that injury or accident or traumatic event can a lot of times shape you, but it doesn't necessarily have to define you. And for me, that was huge. I was like, you know what, you're right. This doesn't have to define me. I can use this as an experience, and then like further better myself in a lot of ways. So I mean, there's so many people in my life. Marcus Haney, one of my best friends from high school, took me on my first road trip after my accident. That was an eye-opening experience. Yeah, there's just so many people I can't even begin to think, like really close friends, and I'm really fortunate for that.
Awesome. And as far as, I meet so many people that are paralyzed in their mind. They're
Mm,
stopping themselves from doing things because they think they can't. What do you want to
Hmm.
tell those people? I think it's such
Yeah.
such a shame when you see that, like, hey, believe in yourself,
Yeah.
and try get the small wins. But it's much easier said and done, especially if you
Oh, for
if
sure.
you're if you feel weak. We all know, like, when we feel weak, it doesn't matter if someone says, yeah, come on, cheer up, buddy. Like, you're like, fuck you, I
Yeah.
don't like. So
Yeah. I
it's
felt that
hard.
way all the, yeah. I mean, I remember in the beginning, when I first got my accident, and they were trying to force a therapist, a neuropsychologist, all these people to just see me. And I was like, no, like, why the fuck do I need to talk to somebody who doesn't know my condition? Like,
Yeah.
why am I going to talk about to a stranger? And I was really stubborn, and then I was really kind of naive that, talking through things is actually really therapeutic. But like, what I have to say about that is, yeah, I do know what it's like to be paralyzed in your mind, because those first 2 years was a real uphill battle. And the moments where I'm like, what's the point? You ask yourself, like, why? And I think there has to be a moment where you just have to stop feeling sorry for yourself. Like, I felt sorry that I was like, hey, I'm a young kid. I had a bright future. What happened? And I started talking to myself in all these past tense, like, this could have, or I should have. And everyone knows this, you can always say that you should have, could have, would have. Like, it's all these, like, almost excuses. And there came to be a point where I didn't want to feel sorry for myself. I didn't want to be a case where people were always like, oh, we had these expectations for Ryan, and I'm sure Ryan had expectations of himself, but because of this, like, you know what, he has a perfectly good reason or excuse not to, or not to be able to accomplish those things. And I think all of us start to convince ourselves of that if we tell ourselves that long enough. I think after college, and I graduated, I was able to graduate with my friends and my peers. It took a lot of time, and there was a lot of that mental thing. I was like, man, you know what? Like, all my friends are getting these cool internships in the summer. They're traveling. I'm like in summer school trying to keep up and catch up. And you're going to go through these hard moments in your life, but just know that if you keep working at it, you're going to get far. And I think when people are paralyzed in their minds, and thinking like, I can't do this or I can't do that, um, I would just say eventually you just got to snap out of it and then know that you can. You just got to push yourself.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. And I mean, all those small steps adds up, right? We're looking at
100%.
all the cool people that have accomplished things that we admire, and we're like, oh wow, that's so cool. But we forget about all the, the small wins they had to go through, and all the things
Yeah.
they had to do in order to get there.
We're all guilty of that, right? Like, it's
Yeah.
comparison. They say comparison is the thief of joy, and I believe that, because every time you might accomplish something which is big for you, then you're just like, oh, but this person or so and so, they did that. Um, I'm guilty of it 100%. I'm a
Mm.
hypocrite, because, like, but I realize, like, you know what, like, wait, stop, celebrate the small wins, like,
Yeah.
look at what you've accomplished, and you guys, you push yourself, and believe in yourself. I think that's just important. Um,
Yeah.
it's tough sometimes.
Yeah, I mean, we all, like, people that are listening to this show, like, if you're listening here and you've listened for a while, you know all the answers. It's not the answers that's the problem, is to actually go out and fucking do it, and do it
Yeah.
every day, even when you don't feel like it. That's the hard thing. And
Yeah.
we're all guilty of that, right? But I know for myself, like, for example, when my clock rings in the morning, I'm like, of course I want to stay in bed a little bit longer, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
But
I want to hit
once
that
I'm
sleep
up,
button for sure.
yeah, once I'm up, like, hey, this is good.
Yeah. What was your motivation? Like, how do you feel like that inspiration for you, waking up, getting ready, setting these goals at 15? Like, what inspired that? Was that something from your parents, or you feel like that was just like in your core, like in in,
And
in who you are?
I don't know. I think, like, my father's my karate coach, but I had
Oh,
I
amazing.
had a lot of pain, growing up, because I was bullied, I was overweight, I lost all my
Mm,
friends. First, I was the shortest and chubby kid in class. Then I lost weight because I had problems with my what's called like a eating disorder, or whatever you want to call
mm,
it. And then I was just skinny and short, and uh, had bad confidence and all of that. So I think that drove me to the karate dojo, because in there
yeah.
nobody cared. You can just train hard. And then
Yeah.
eventually, I think what I realized was, okay, I thought if I become good at something, people are gonna like me. So I think
Of
that was a
course.
driver at first, but then
Yeah.
I realized it doesn't matter if people like you, that you don't want to like you. You want to
Yeah.
be yourself, and you want to be.
Yeah.
So I went on this whole journey, like exploring and learning from myself. And now my drive is, to build a good life for myself. I would lie if I said something else, but it's also to help a lot of people, because I was, paralyzed in my mind. I had bad confidence. I
Mm,
was putting, roadblocks in my own life all the time. uh,
mm,
and finally, because of all the great role models I get to meet, and getting track record in my own life, I realized that, hey, that small little chubby kid, that was just a story you told yourself. Like, hey, love yourself, go out and do your shit and have fun. The
yeah.
people that love you are gonna love you, and people are gonna have opinions either way. Don't even bother.
Yeah, no, absolutely. No, I love that. And I think one thing to touch up on that point where you're trying to build up confidence and approach something so people can like you, it really starts with liking yourself, right? You got to love
Yes.
yourself to be able to love other people. And I realized that where, early on, like I got to the point where like, you know what, like if this is what the way my life is, that's fine. Like at least I can be nice to other people. I can quote unquote love other people.
Yeah.
And what I realized is like you can't truly love someone unless you love yourself, because you can't respect other people unless you respect yourself. Like there comes a moment where you got to feel good about yourself to be genuine about that feeling, or else there's like it doesn't come off like in the same way. And it took me years, like years, where I like hated myself. I hated my body. I hated what happened. All that confidence just is gone. And slowly you build up that confidence. You're like, you know what? I do want to take care of myself. Like I want to eat healthy. I want to eat right. I want to finish school. I want to learn and educate myself. You start to build this stuff to where like, I'm doing these things because I love myself. And then you start realizing that the friendships and your relationships with your family, your parents, like start to mature and for the right reasons. Cause you're like, oh, I want to take care of myself. Like now I want to make sure that you're good. Like, are you doing this and this? Like you're looking out for the best interests of people. But yeah, someone told me that like, Ryan, you can't love other people unless you love yourself. Cause like I think in my mind I wanted to, in theory, I was like, oh, like, it's okay. I can be this martyr or whatever. It doesn't work like that. You gotta start with yourself and look from inside out.
Yeah. Were there any specific moments in your life when you kind of, when that clicked, and when you're like, hey, uh, this is actually important?
I think the health component for me came in maybe like a year and a half, 2 years, where I was like, you know what, like I realized that there's all these things I could do sports wise. And like one of the big things on my list was actually running a marathon. I
Yeah.
was a big runner in high school. Um, and one of my goals was like, I'm gonna run a marathon. And I was like, you know what? Like that was one of the things going back to our original conversation. Like, I can't do that. I can't run a marathon. I was like, wait, no, you can. Like, of course you can. And then I discovered there's hand cycling, race chair. Um, and I signed up for a race chair 3 weeks out, did my first marathon in San Diego. And then, I did 7. I got to train with the US Paralympic team and
Oh, wow.
discover that whole world and go back into competitive sports. My co-founder Kent was training with the Olympic judo team in Japan. He was fighting professional Muay Thai. And I was inspired by him and what he was taking, supplementation, what he was putting in his body to like better performance. And yeah, I got lucky. I was surrounded with the right people that was encouraging me, and I was surrounding myself with people that were trying to be better.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, like I think there's definitely those moments, where
Yeah.
you're like,
So let's talk about Neuro. Like, you're in a
yeah,
really cool journey here. Like, how did that start? How long ago? And like, talk a little bit about the journey.
yeah. So going back to that conversation of like people supporting me, Kent was one of my, closest friends, and we met my freshman year. He was a sophomore. He was studying neuroscience. I was doing chemistry and econ, and he was training heavily. Olympic judo team, Muay Thai. I had I had given up running completely. I wanted to focus on other things, and just saw how he was training. And when I got injured, he was supporting me to kind of get back into this routine and supplementation and what I was putting in my body. He was giving me these pills that he was mixing himself, and that was essentially like version 0 of Neuro. It was like, how do you take supplementation in pill form? And he was like on all these forums on Reddit and studying what was actually working for his body. And I just trusted him, it was like not made, it was made in his like lab, which was his like desk at home. And we were taking that for years until 2013. We were getting our scuba diving certification, and it was something that we've wanted to do, and we are curious about, like, let's just do it. And then we're tired, and we're like, well, energy drinks are bad or inconvenient, pills, like we didn't have any, so we're just like, what if we were able to create this energy product in a more convenient format like gum and mints? And that was the idea. That was back in 2013, and we're like, yeah, that's a great idea, let's discover it. And then we got busy, we got full-time jobs, and it wasn't until 2015 where we actually saved up enough money to kind of give it a shot and just go for it. So we launched the brand the end of 2015 on an Indiegogo campaign. It got picked up. The Reddit community supported us. Dr. Oz did a whole segment on us, Time Magazine, and we bootstrapped the business for like a year and a half, shipping boxes out of Kent's condo, going to the post office every day, packaging boxes on the weekends. Like, I got really good at making boxes and putting on labels. Yeah, and fast forward, we have, we've grown the business quite a bit, and we're at CVS, we're at Whole Foods now nationwide, we're on Amazon on our website, and we've slowly built this community where people are like, love our product. They take it as an alternative, or people who can't drink coffee or energy drinks or are looking for a healthier alternative. We've built kind of a cool, loyal fan base, and it's a small company still, and we're just looking every day to continue to grow it.
Awesome. And what has been the biggest challenges of growing a company?
I think for us, there's so many challenges when you're starting a company, but I would say one is marketing and just education, getting people to try the product. We realized for us, sampling is really big. So going to events, CrossFit events, music festivals, charities, like we would donate a lot of product. We're just trying our best to get the product out there. I think that's a big challenge. Yeah. And then as a company continues to scale, and we're at 17 people, I think management, maintaining a healthy company culture, encouraging people to be active, pursue their goals outside of work, making sure company satisfaction, employee satisfaction is there. There's a lot of challenges that come along with it, but yeah. I would say those two are really important to me.
And as a leader, what would you say are your strengths and weaknesses?
I would say, so some of my weaknesses is, I think definitely like organization. I'm a little bit all over the place. Like for me, like I have a lot of ideas. I love building relationships with people, and luckily we've hired in people who are very task oriented, very, operationally and organized. And so those people on our team are being super core. But I would say some of my strengths are, I think, connecting the dots. Like, it's been, one of the things that I find value in, and a lot of the times is kind of keeping my eyes open and ears open, and being receptive to like what things are not working, and trying to make the connections on trying to improve things. So if it's formulation, how do we find better formulators and flavor houses? If it's like shipping, like how do we improve processes at our fulfillment warehouses to get product out on time? I think that's kind of my strength is listening and trying to connect the dots.
Yeah. And I'm curious because as I told you yesterday, I had the founder of Reebok here, and
amazing.
Yeah, he's Joe Foster, super cool guy. And he told me back in the days, like social media was basically runner's world for them. That was the
right. The magazines.
Every runner bought that magazine, and they had a I think the August number of every year had a rating on the shoes, and the goal was to get a 5-star shoe. And the moment Reebok got a 5-star shoe, they actually got 3 5-star shoes. That's when everything went crazy. But he told me it's so hard, the fulfillment and all of that is so hard when you get those orders. So I'm just curious, what happened the day after Shark Tank? Like, what happened?
We were luckily pretty prepared for Shark Tank, but like certain things like that can trigger off like a lot of orders.
Yeah.
It's difficult. Like there's some people think that, you know, you're an overnight success and the rest is history. But I think with a lot of publicity and really good media and PR, sometimes the biggest challenges is the growing pains of being able to meet the demand, right?
Yeah.
Like you get like 100,000 orders, but then you only had inventory for 50,000. Like it could actually bankrupt you in some ways, because then you're putting in a lot of rushed inventory and product to try to fill the remaining 50,000. By then people might not want the product anymore. So there's a lot of different challenges like companies go through. For us on Shark Tank, luckily we were kind of prepared, but we didn't know when we were going to air. We shot it back in September. We didn't air till April. And those like pretty much 6 months, we were just kind of waiting, and we had inventory. And sometimes you buy so much inventory that it takes away from the capital that you can spend on marketing or advertising, all this other stuff. So there's definitely some challenges that come along with that. So I'm sure, you know, the Reebok founder has some insane stories, because it probably didn't end there. He probably had a lot of other growth challenges, but
Yeah.
you learn a lot from them. It's kind of my big takeaway, and you try your best to like prepare for it again in the future if that opportunity ever arises again.
Yeah. And what's your vision for the company now?
I think our vision for the company is trying to be the go-to leader for functional gum and mints. You know, primarily you go and you get a pack of gum or mints. It's breath freshening. You know, and that's pretty much it. We want to be able to put, you know, multivitamins in a gum and mint. We want to be able to put a stress relief gum and mint. You know, different types of form factors, or like goals, to be able to put that in that form factor is going to be our goal. So, you know, we started off with an energy gum and mint. That's been, you know, our flagship product. But ultimately, our vision is to kind of put health and wellness in your pocket. That's our goal.
I love that. Health and wellness in your pocket. That's a
Yeah.
cool one. Um, so as far as growing the company and building this brand, what has been the most exciting part? What is something that has happened that you never even thought was possible?
Um, I mean, Joe Rogan being a huge fan of the product is really cool.
Yeah.
Um, I mean, we sent him a bunch of product, and all of a sudden, like a few months later, he was talking about it with Tony Hawk, Dr. Rhonda Patrick,
Oh wow.
John Stewart. Like it was just so cool to see that, that we have people all around the world, like college students, you know, working professionals, senior citizens, everybody that, you know, there's different people who take the product and give us kind of this review and honest feedback. And you know, Joe Rogan, you know, is a superstar, and you know, in
Yeah.
the podcast world, and like as an influencer. And so that was really cool. That was special. Obviously, different wins, like getting into Whole Foods or CVS, going from me and Kent as the only employees to hiring our first employee, you know, to hiring the 10th employee. There's like small milestones, getting our own office. There's a lot of those small wins, but you know, I encourage everybody who's on that startup journey to journal. Like you said, you write your goals every day since you're 15. I think another important thing is to write your accomplishments and like small wins every day, or it doesn't have to be every other day, like once a week, but important to remind yourself like kind of the progress, and take a step back to appreciate it.
What do you regret in your life, Ryan?
Yeah, I get this question a lot. I think people often think like, oh, do you regret, like, you know, going off that jump, or do you regret anything in your life? And I think ultimately living life in regret means that you're living backwards and in the past. And so I try to think about every moment not as like a regret, but more of as a learning experience. So what did I learn out of that experience, and not think about it as a mistake or a failure. A lot of times people in startups are like, oh, this failed. Like, what did you learn from your biggest failure? Or what's your biggest regret? I like to say like, oh, like this happened and this is what I learned from it. This happened, this kicked my ass. Like we thought we were going to be bankrupt. It was a horrible decision, but then we implemented XYZ to try to make that not happen in the future. So I think it's just reframing that question. And we asked ourselves that a lot. Like, okay, how do we improve this? And not think about it as like a mistake.
And as far as looking at, confidence and what do you do on a day-to-day basis to work on your confidence?
That's a good question. I don't know if I've been asked that. Day-to-day confidence, I would say being proud of like what you're doing, like if you're doing hard work and it might not be completely your passion, at least you know that you're working hard. Or if you're not liking what you're doing, actively looking for something that is going to be going toward achieving your goal. So I think that all boils down into confidence and kind of staying grounded, staying connected with like people who are close with your lives. Pick up the phone, call a loved one. I think it's a firm reminder of you know who you are and where you are, and I think that all kind of falls into like self confidence.
Yeah. I think confidence is so hard because I realized in my life when I'm happy, I'm usually very confident. And when I'm
Mhm.
sad, it's almost like the body shows like when you
Yeah,
like
you
this,
slouch over
yeah.
you kind of put your head a little bit down. Yeah,
I
mood
think
affects a lot of that.
it does. Yeah. And but for me, I try to do things that make me happy on a day-to-day basis, even though like every job, every business, if you want to become an athlete, entrepreneur, actor, singer, whatever you want to do in order to
Hmm.
excel, not every moment is going to be super fun, right? Because you
No,
have to
yeah.
hustle, you have to, there will be struggles.
I always say that like you don't know, you can't be happy unless you've ever been sad, right?
Yeah.
You need a baseline, you need some reference point. And so for you to really enjoy success, like you have to have struggle. Not too much struggle or not too many, wins, because then you get complacent and things get too easy. But um yeah, I think that's important. Like what do you do that kind of makes you happy? Like
I work
what
out. uh
working out, that's
yeah,
great. That's like one of the best ways to do it.
I love that. I meditate. I love
Mhm.
coffee. I usually go
Amazing.
like in the morning, just have a coffee, look at the beach, try to be with myself a little bit. And
It's awesome.
yeah, I try to do, I mean, it's interesting. I want to ask you this because it's a difference between being feeling lonely and being in solitude, right?
Mhm.
Uh, what do you do, like how have you worked with yourself, and do you enjoy your own company now?
That's a really good question. I actually, by trait, I think my personality, I'm not really good at being by myself. I'm pretty extroverted. So there's a lot of moments where like, oh man, like I'm gonna be eating alone tonight or dinner tonight. Like I like want to see who's available. But I do think it's really important to take those moments of solitude to just like enjoy being alone, being with yourself, like not in a negative way, but just be like, oh, I'm gonna enjoy my own company
Yeah.
and like be with my own thoughts. I think that's important. But um yeah, I think
Yeah.
that's
Yeah, no, I
I
think that's really
but I
hard.
I do work on that. Like
Yeah.
I think I actively know that like, oh, it's good to spend some time alone. Like, after this call, probably go hopefully check out the sunset, go outside. I've been working all day inside, which is not good. So
Yeah,
get outside a little bit.
enjoy
Yeah,
it.
I think enjoy that. Yeah, you got to.
I think, the as far as the solitude versus loneliness, I think for any person listening to this, if you want to, excel in your life, first of all, I do believe go fast, go alone, go far, go together. So
Mm-hmm.
you
100%.
yeah, so I do believe that you should be with other people, but there's also going to come a couple of decisions and moments in your life when it's only you. So to build that strength, I think it's important to spend time with yourself and be okay with that, and not by self being by yourself. I don't mean that being on your phone, really being with yourself, and listen to those negative thoughts that comes up in any person's mind, and battling them, and winning over them, and knowing, hey, this is going to come at me, but I am ready, and I'm going to win over that, and I'm going to love myself in order
Yeah,
to love others and create the life that I want.
absolutely. No, I love that. I love how you said that. That's
Yeah. As far as goals, how do you
that's
work with
great.
goals?
With goals, like I said, I think the goalpost keeps moving when you get closer and closer to it. But I like to set goals um that are team oriented. I do have personal goals like right now. I had a dream of flying as a kid. Right now, I'm like actively trying to get my private pilot certification. Those are personal goals that I think ultimately would have a greater goal on who I am, build a little bit more confidence, make me a better leader, help encourage, the people on my team to kind of go for their own goals too. So, we've had teammates who've switched completely different roles from web development to like email marketing or like data analyst to operations. Like as long as you're open and receptive to like seeing what people are doing, you can be a better leader. Um, and they mention what those goals are. So I think fact checking just not yourself, like, hey, if what I'm doing, is this really what I want to be doing? And then also asking other people too, like your loved ones, like, hey, what have you been up to? Like, is this like, do you enjoy it? And being really honest, because these conversations that we have on podcasts really make me think and make me introspective on like what the outcome I want it to be. And I think you can ask those same questions with your close friends and family too.
Yeah, and I mean, that's why I'm so blessed, because these a lot of people here listening now, and a lot of people that never have these conversations. Everything is uh, more on a superficial level, but I love digging deep into your own history and your own life, because
Mhm.
we need to spend that time if we want to live a good life, and life's so short. So
So short, yeah.
you should live a good life, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think I'm reminded, I try to remind myself every day, I'm like, man, life is really short. Like,
Yeah.
I mean, time moves by really quick. So really try to enjoy what you're doing.
Yeah. I'll have two last questions, right? And then I'll let you go. The first one, I want you to imagine that you're 87 years old.
Mhm.
You're in your mansion with your family or by yourself, whatever you want it to be, and you're overlooking your favorite view. I don't know if it's the hills, the ocean, mountains, and you're contemplating on your life. What do you want to see and have happen in order to say, "Hey, this was actually a good one"?
Man, that's a beautiful question. I would hope that one day, I can enjoy this with, a partner, like, hopefully maybe one day kids or grandkids if I'm 87, probably hopefully grandkids, maybe. Uh either case, like I would love to know or have the feeling that, I helped, sorry. I
Yeah.
helped some, people with accomplishing their goals in life. I think that's really important. Um for me, I've had so many incredible mentors and people in my life who inspired me to want to live again, to fight for something. And I'm not, I don't try to say that to be cheesy or say that lightly. Like I really had moments where like wanted to give up. And there's people in my life who gave me the confidence and the courage to try something till I fell in love with life again. I would say if I can encourage, one person to fall in love with life again, I would consider my life a success.
Yeah. Oh, I'm getting goosebumps. And because I think we're all going through different trials and tribulations in our life, right?
Mhm.
Yours was very, very direct, and we can all understand it. But how you found your way back is admirable, and I'm very happy that I was able to meet you this
Likewise.
way. Yeah, and I hope
Yeah,
the journey continues as friends for a long time.
it
Uh,
will. It will.
last question for you, Ryan, is for people that are still here. 1 hour is a long time in
Yeah.
2021 with
Yeah.
everybody's like
People,
goldfish attention, 3 seconds on
yeah.
Instagram, and then you're gone. So if you're still here, thank you guys. We love you. 1 hour with us is hopefully worth your time. What is the one thing they can do right now to get a little bit closer to their goal?
Like you said, write it down. I think the step of having something come to fruition is wishing for it and then acting on it. And the easiest way to act on it is just to write it down. I really like what you said earlier about pen to paper. I think that's a beautiful thing. I wrote down goals before in 2020, and I look back on it, I still had that piece of paper. I'm like, oh, what did I accomplish? What did I exceed, or what did I fall short on? Same thing this year. I think that's important. Write it down. I'm stealing your answer,
No,
Peter.
it's awesome. It's funny, over 230 guests now, and it's one of the most popular answers. Why? Because it fucking works. So
It works. It works.
write it down, guys. Sorry for all the profanity here. But we want to be authentic and real, and that's the good thing with 2021. It's a podcast, you can say whatever you want, right? And that is
Exactly.
awesome. Ryan, thank you so much. For people that want to check out Neuro or want to learn more about you, where can they find you?
Yeah. On our Instagram for our company is just Neurogum, Neurogum. Our website's getneuro.com. And then personally it's ryan.ryc. So yeah.
Awesome.
Thanks so much for having me on, Peter.
This was awesome. And guys, before I let you go, I need your help. I'm creating a tribe here with 10 million people creating better lives, achieving their goals. I can't do it myself. I need guests like Ryan on the show. I need you to help me share this, give us a review. Let's spread this message. Let's get more people involved in living better lives and actually have some fun. If you enjoy this show, I also encourage you to check out some of our other shows. One that I really enjoyed was with Daniele Bolelli. We talked about his research on Bruce Lee, and actually the question was Bruce Lee happy? I really enjoyed this conversation. And then
Awesome.
there's a whole bunch of others. Check us out at ilovesuccess.co, YouTube, Instagram, podcast, whatever you is your preferred method. Without further ado, thank you guys, and I'll see you next week.